Welcome to Air Emergencies Simply Explained. In today's video, we will be looking into the runway mishap of Ansett Australia Flight 881. October 19, 1994. A Boeing 747-300 Ansett Australia Flight 881 is flying from Sydney, Australia to Osaka, Japan. There are 253 passengers and 21 crew members on board. The first officer and the flight engineer are quite new to the Boeing 747-300. The first officer is still in the process of completing his Boeing 747-300 training, while the flight engineer has just completed his Boeing 747-300 training. An hour into the flight, the pilots noticed that the oil quantity on engine 1 is decreasing. The pilots monitor the indication and goes through the required checklists. Airline engineers are also informed of the situation. Engine 1's oil quantity eventually reaches 0. The engine oil's pressure indicator also begins fluctuating. The captain decides to shut the engine down and return back to Sydney. The captain also decides to let the first officer fly back to Sydney as part of his training. As the aircraft nears Sydney, the pilots decide to configure the aircraft early for landing. This is due to the possibility of the aircraft's hydraulics being slower due to the loss of the number 1 engine. As the pilots extend the flaps, they notice that the inboard trailing flaps are extending slower than the onboard trailing flaps. The flight engineer notes down that the hydraulic pressure is down to 1,000 pounds per square inch. The pilots lower the landing gear. As the landing gear extends, the landing gear horn sounds. The flight engineer checks the state of the landing gear on his station panel. The captain retracts the flaps from 25 to 20. He hopes that this will redirect the hydraulic flow to the landing gear. The flight engineer reports that the landing gear is down and locked. The captain again extends the flaps to 25. However, the landing gear horn sounds again. The captain asks the flight engineer if the landing gear light is green on both the primary and secondary indications. Despite his concern over the landing gear horn, the captain continues with the landing. As the aircraft touches down, the pilots are informed that their nose gear is not extended. The captain decides to go around. However, the flight engineer reports that they can't as the thrust reversers have already been deployed. Flight 881 comes to a stop with its nose gear retracted at Kingsford Smith International Airport's runway 16. Investigators discovered that the loose angle gearbox housing cover caused engine 1's oil leak. However, despite engine 1 being shut down, the aircraft should not have any hydraulic problems. Investigators believed that the air-driven pump switch was in the off position. The flight engineer disputed this theory and stated that the pump had been on during the entire flight and was only shut down after landing. When investigators theorized that the flight engineer may have accidentally shut off the switch, the flight engineer reported that he had not done so. Records indicated that the air-driven pump system had a history of defects prior to the incident. However, no defects were found during the post-accident troubleshooting. Investigators were unable to determine why the aircraft encountered hydraulic problems. There was simply not enough hydraulic pressure to lower the landing gear. During the landing, the pilots moved the flaps several times. Had they not done so, there would have been just enough hydraulic power to lower the nose gear. The aircraft VHINH eventually returned to service. It was acquired by Singapore Airlines in 1999 and retired in 2001. That is it for today's video. I hope you learned something new, and please subscribe and click the notification bell for more Simply Explained Air Emergency videos.